Okay, welcome to the Curriculum Committee meeting of the West Bend School Board. We will go ahead and start with introductions. I'm Melanie Ehrgott, School Board member.
Jill Reese, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Kelly Ling, School Board member.
June Kruger, School Board member.
Okay, and we will start our agenda with the seal of biliteracy, and it was prepared by Michelle Garcia.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Malstrand. I'm the Director of Student Services, and I just wanted to introduce Michelle Garcia to our school board and our community. Michelle is a multilingual family engagement specialist, and she works as an instructional coach in our district. And her primary focus is supporting students and families who are learning English as a second language. So she's going to share some information this afternoon about the seal of biliteracy, and this is really our first conversation about this potential in our district. So thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you guys so much for your time this afternoon. Like Emily said, my name is Michelle Garcia, and I work with multilingual students and families. And I'm really excited to present the Seal of Biliteracy information with you guys today. So it is an offering that we are thinking of implementing, hopefully the 2024-2025 school year, if approved. And I thought that we would just start with some introductory information about what it is and some of the important points. And then if you guys have any questions or comments, to just please let me know. So we'll just be looking at some of the important points, the who will benefit from it, what is the Seal of Biliteracy, why we want to implement it, and how students can earn it. The Seal of Biliteracy is a state-approved student credential that our district would be awarding to students who demonstrate proficiency in English and an additional language, also known as a partner language, that they would be learning through our world language offerings here in the district, like our Spanish, French, and German classes, as well as our students that speak an additional language at home. So there are 22 languages spoken by families in the West Bend School District. So the Seal of Biliteracy is an offering for those students as well to encourage the study of language. What the Seal of Biliteracy looks like is a sticker on the student's diploma when they graduate. They would also receive an official state Seal of Biliteracy certificate and a medal. And the distinction will also be noted on that student's transcripts. So why we are so excited to implement the Seal of Biliteracy is that it will really encourage students to take advantage of the amazing world language course offerings that we have in our course planning guide. We also promote college and career readiness for our students. And students, when they are going through the college admissions process, will have that additional distinction of achievement with the Seal of Biliteracy that is really attractive to our colleges and universities because of the rigor that it asks of students. Also, the employability skills of our students would also be promoted as they achieve the Seal of Biliteracy because it identifies students or our graduates when they are applying within the workforce, that they have strong language skills and again have committed themselves through the requirements and criteria to obtain the seal. And as we were testing the waters a little bit to see if our local businesses did in fact think that we were moving in the right direction with this, with Tim Carter's help, we surveyed some local businesses, and as of this morning I received 40 responses, so from 40 businesses, asking if they valued bilingual skills in employees and if they saw a need for it in their workplace. 31 out of those 40 businesses did in fact value bilingual skills in their employees and were really excited about this offering potentially coming to the school district. They did indicate a need for it in their workplace, with some of the workplaces calling it a critical skill in order to best serve their customers. So that was really encouraging that those businesses were behind the fact and that our students and our graduates from our schools would be encouraged to have that skill. Something that I would love to explore with the businesses as we move forward in this effort is additional incentives that maybe they could offer students that have the seal of biliteracy, whether it's incentives that are opportunities or financial incentives, something that is clear for students to feel motivated to go all the way through this. So how students earn the seal of biliteracy can be described in 3 buckets. The first is demonstrating proficiency in English. So we would look at the 4 domains of the English language, which are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And our students would demonstrate proficiency by earning a score of 18 or higher on the ACT, ELA, or English Language Arts portion of that assessment. Our students who are categorized as EL students, who are learning English along with their home language, would demonstrate English proficiency with a score of 4 or higher on the Access test, which is the English language proficiency test that they take every year. All students would need to demonstrate proficiency in their partner language of choice. So that's Spanish, French, German, or whatever home language our multilingual students are bringing from home in the 4 skill domains. And that would be assessed with a score of intermediate, high, or greater on an assessment that is approved by the state, provided by the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. And the assessment is called the Assessment of Performance Toward Proficiency in Languages, or more informally referred to as APPLE. Finally, the 3rd bucket that our students would be completing is the sociocultural competence. They would have 3 tasks that include a presentation, 2 essays, and a service learning project in English and their partner language in order to demonstrate those 3 things graded by a rubric. And just to give you an idea of the scope of the seal of biliteracy, this visual shows that 49 out of the 50 states in our United States have already adopted an approved seal of biliteracy in their state, with 1 state that is in the early stages of adopting it. So it's a nationally recognized effort that our district would be honored to take part in. So the next steps that we're thinking about pending board approval are these initial feedback conversations. We are hoping to build a seal of biliteracy committee that would have department representatives in order to really plan how we want to advertise this to our students, families, and community members so that they understand what it is, what the benefits are, and what the pathways are, as well as how we want to make sure our students are really supported in obtaining the proficiency in these languages. We will also have to submit an application for the seal of biliteracy to Wisconsin's Department of Public Instruction, and we would do that with the help of the committee's plan. So what questions do you have for me? Or anything I can clarify?
I am just curious, on the slide about the what they need to complete. I'm just not familiar with the access testing. What's the highest score? So you want a 4 or greater. What is the highest that anyone can get?
A perfect score on the access is a 6.
Okay.
We consider students that earn a score of 5 or higher to be English proficient, and they exit EL criteria at that time.
Thank you.
Right, I have a question. Is there any cost to the district to begin this process?
Sure, so the budgetary considerations that we would have would mostly be with that partner language proficiency assessment, or the APPLE, the Assessment of Performance Toward Proficiency in Languages. So that is provided to us through the company, the Language Testing International Company. And each test is approximately $20 depending on the language. For our what we call a lower incidence language, such as Hmong or Pashto, they tend to run at a little bit higher, about $55 per test, if we bundle and are buying Spanish and German and those higher incidence languages.
So there's no really upfront cost, it's just
No.
per student that would go through it, it would be whatever their test is.
I have one question. The partner language, you're saying proficiency in partner language, test flow chart. I know in the middle schools, the kids take foreign language and they typically obtain 1 credit before they enter high school. At what grade level, if they were to follow that path, would you expect proficiency? Would there be an expectation that they take more foreign language in high school than they do now? So I guess my question is, at what level do they typically achieve proficiency in a foreign language?
Sure, so the world language teachers could probably speak a little bit more to that, but we are going to be aiming for them to be doing this their junior and senior year of high school. They are exposed to those world language courses starting in grade 5 at Silverbrook, so we will really be amping up and encouraging the continuation of those world languages, so they are taking it straight throughout and in all 4 years of high school in order to really be ready to take that proficiency test. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll take this opportunity to ask if there's any further questions. All right, well, thank you for presenting. It was nice to hear what you laid out there for us.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the next thing on our agenda, which is the high school Phy-Ed course reviews and revisions, and this will be presented by John Groff and Joe Schmitz.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I have Joe Schmitz with me, who was also a member of our program analysis team that brought forward K2 Fitness as well. Part of the high school department is Kyle Feger, Mark Pertel, and Elisa Spaeth as well. So kind of the agendas, we're going to go through the department context, what they make up. That's kind of the team there. However, there's more to it. Courses to sunset, revise, and then add as well. So we also have a final slide that has some future considerations. So department context, when it comes down to it, they have a mission statement, and the graduation requirements at the high school are 1.5 credits currently for physical education programming. The proposal, as I said earlier, was part of our program analysis where we went through the K4 group, the 5-6, 7-8, 9-12. Joe was our representative once again for that team, and we really looked at what are our current offerings, how do they compare to those around us, does it align with our mission and vision, and then Joe gracefully took it back to the entire department at the high school and kind of went through where are we at, what courses are kind of fading out. You know, you look at enrollment, you look at sections, you look at what's being offered around, and then also kind of how do we meet the needs of our students at West Bend High School. So I'm very excited to share what he did. This is our current course flow chart in the high school. So when you enter in grade 9, you take Fit for Life. There is also a health and wellness requirement, but then you kind of step into a second lane of courses for grades 10 through 12, and then that third and final lane, which is kind of I guess it's kind of a capstone to that lane. If it's Adventure Ed 2, Virtual Fitness, or Strength and Conditioning 2. So the proposed flow chart will change a little bit. It kind of connects to a lot of the work that Tim Harder has been working on and Dr. Reese as far as kind of career planning. So if you look at the proposed flow chart, that required course is still at the top. You have Fit for Life. And then you kind of have that column A, which is more skill-based courses. So your strength and speed, team sports, and B, which is more of your college and career readiness that Joe will talk about here in a second, which is those additions, which is why they're in red. You have coaching, intro to athletic training, officiating. We already offer lifeguarding at the high school, and then strength and speed. You'll notice a course name change there too, and Joe will go a little bit into that as well.
All right, so we kind of, excuse me, so when we looked at it, like the state standards are set up in level 1, 2, and 3, so that's kind of the way we came up with our columns. So as we go through everything, 3 being more advanced, 1 being introductory, they kind of just build off of each other. We're looking at sunsetting personal fitness. That course, there's three offerings right now this calendar year. It's really similar to strength conditioning and also our virtual. It's kind of the same thing. So we looked at it as an opportunity to, if we move on from that one, we can add some other things there. And then Adventure Ed 2, really good curriculum. A lot of kids like Adventure Ed 1 and 2. We just figured with the loss of a lot of some of the high elements and some of those things that have come out of the gym before my time, it's kind of stretched thin. So if we combine it, it becomes a little bit more robust as one class. So it's more of a combining than just truly sunsetting that one. And then we're going to revise. So our strength conditioning class right now, we have strength conditioning 1, introduction, and then strength conditioning 2. We talked about changing the name to strength and speed to more, it's a more modern term. Conditioning's, you know, when you hear that, you're just running constantly. It's not necessarily inviting. When really we're teaching biomechanics and speed and how to move. So it makes more sense, strength and speed. And then we also want the opportunity for kids, like if they take one semester of a class and they work really hard and they don't do anything for the next semester, kind of starting over, you're never really building on it. So we wanted to make it into something that they could take 8 semesters if they really wanted to. Some of this comes out to, you know, from an after school workout, we don't really have the space either. So by building in that time where kids are still coming in during the day, during study halls and trying to get some work in, just let's build it into credit and really train them the right way and making sure they're treated correctly. The other one, adapted physical education. So this is one we have specially designed by Ed, which is how our district looks at special ed. Each student in that class has it in their IEP, a specific goal. And then adapted ed, which is still a special ed, it's not open to everyone, but it's for those kids that maybe need a smaller class, more personalized care. Adaptive from an overall word, adaptive and specially designed, just depends on which area you're in and which one they use. So they kind of mean the same thing. So we talked about changing it to personalized physical education. So that way we can take those kids that need that smaller group, we come up with personalized goals similar to an IEP process, but then we can actually, you know, kind of hold them accountable to that versus it being a little bit more open-ended how it was. And then our additions. So these are just in alphabetical order. We have 3. Starting with coaching, all these ones are kind of based off of community needs and opportunities for kids that have something like career and, you know, college-based that they take with them beyond high school. So coaching, we have a lot of kids that take team sports right now. So how do we take team sports and make it into something, you know, to take with us? So coaching was one. This is one that hopefully we can get a little bit more classroom time, work on kids having an actual coaching philosophy, know how to run a practice, you know, how to make all those adjustments. So bringing them into classroom and studying the sport more than just participating. Intro to athletic training, again, career-based. The exact description, you know, kids get to actually explore the human body in consideration to common athletic injuries. We want to partner with this one with Aurora. Talking to Nicolay as well, they're working on the same curriculum with theirs, so those conversations have started. It's a little bit more difficult. We have to figure out some contract things with that, which we'll talk about in the last slide there about cost. But again, being able to take students, have them assist our athletic training staff already and work with kids and have kind of that leadership role. And then officiating, there's always a need for officials. Kids, they keep lowering the age for kids to be able to officiate youth sports. This is one, it's kind of popping up almost every district in the state right now. You work with your athletic director, the state provides all the materials for you. You kind of work as an independent study kind of thing, so this one kind of hybrid. We're gonna work as a group in a classroom to become an official, as well as the athletic side as kind of a team sports alternative.
Yep. So kind of the final part, and I'll probably be taking officiating and coaching as well. So I'm excited to see that because it is popping up throughout the state as far as, and I love the fact that in his description, you put leadership models. What a great thing for kids to learn, or the great leaders that do end up in coaching. And officiating is always a need. Always looking for that. So Adventure Ed sunsetting is a cost of zero. Same with personal fitness, strength, and speed, as it's kind of a name change and kind of modernizing what we're doing. Personalized P is the name re-emphasizing goal setting with our students, which is great to create that student ownership. Coaching, Intro to Athletics, which is that question about the Aurora partnership and where that would go, and then officiating and partnering with the athletic director. The final thing that came out of our program analysis will be future study going into the next school year with our physical education waiver form, and also working with Mrs. Faust as far as virtual physical education and what we can do to best serve our students in West Bend. So thank you very much. Any questions?
All right, well, thank you for your presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing updates on this.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
By the way, Joe does have to go back and coach at the conference track meet, so it's very nice of him to come.
Good luck,
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe, for all your work on this.
All right, up next is Career and Technical Education Department update, and that will be presented by Timothy Harder.
Good evening, everybody. So Joe and John talked a lot about this as we look at opportunities for kids, especially when we get to 9, 12, of preparing them for life after high school, and what that may be. Some of our kids will graduate on June 7th, 8th, whatever the date is this year on Sunday, and start work Monday morning and start in their career. And some kids will go on to apprenticeship, a 2-year, a 4-year program, and so forth. And today what I want to do is give you a little bit of an overview around career education and where we're at in the district. Over the past couple of years, we have spent some time redoing both our IT and computer science pathway in the district, along with our education pathway. And so we'll offer some of our first courses in our education pathway next year, so that hopefully in 6, 7 years, some of those students are coming back here and teaching for us. And we are on our first year currently of offering our new computer science curriculum. And so we're excited to offer those learning experiences for our students. The unique thing about career education is that we go through cyclical cycles to review our programs. And there's actually 2 processes that we go through. The first one is one that the board and this committee sees a little less, and this is more to meet the federal government's requirements. So no matter what review process we go through, it lists up there who our stakeholders are, and they are very important to us, from our business partners, our students, our parents, higher education staff, district staff, and our CTE teachers. But really, the first item on there is that every 2 years, we are required to go through a comprehensive local needs assessment, and that's tied to federal legislation called Carl Perkins. It's a work-based learning and work readiness legislation, and with that comes a grant that we utilize every school year. And so over the last 2 years, we've been kind of redoing our career education programming here in our leadership team and our offerings. And so by repurposing some things in the district, some current positions, reducing a position, and making some shifts and some people getting some certifications, we've actually been able to reduce the cost of outsourcing our career education by $25,000. And so that's $25,000 we're putting back into our programming instead of paying somebody else to manage a grant, provide this opportunity, oversee our work-based learning and so forth here. And so that means we can buy additional needed items for our CT areas and so forth. So that first one, that comprehensive local needs assessment, is something that we will start again here in fall. It's a one-year process where we do a high-level look at our career education program. So we're looking at the entire program. We're saying, do we have the right offerings here? Not the classes specifically, but in our area here, it would be like West Bend not offering manufacturing and welding, and we look at our workforce data in Washington County where 60% of our workforce is in the manufacturing area. We would want to bring that into our school district here and offer that opportunity for our students. We're also looking at data on how well our students do. And so you can become a CTE concentrator, which means I've taken 2 classes within a pathway, and we will compare the success of those students on standardized test scores, attendance, graduation rates, a variety of different pieces of data to see if we are meeting the needs of those kids. And I'm proud to say in our last CLI that we did 2 years ago, our students who are CTE concentrators were actually performing above the rest of all of our students when you average that out at that point in time. So we go through that process. We did that 2 years ago, and then that sustains for a 2-year grant cycle that we write through the federal grant, and that's something we now write here locally. The other program of study review you see on there is what we do locally. It's very similar to the process that Dr. Reese talks about when she does curricular review processes like Joel was just up here this evening talking about changing FIED. So about 3 years ago, we had redone the process, and what's nice is Dr. Reese and I have been able to kind of align the process to meet both of our needs and kind of keep it similar at that point in time. When we do a program of study review, it's really done at minimum every 3 years, which is a lot faster than the rest of our teams may come forward in some of our other curricular areas. The reason being is we're very focused on the specific courses, curriculum, and program skill outcomes for each one of those programs of study. Oh, okay, I thought you were going to add something. So the idea being, the idea being that there's a lot that can change in the world of IT in 3 years. There's a lot that may change in the world of manufacturing or health sciences or whatever else. So we say we will review that at a minimum of every 3 years, and we're down to the specific courses, what units we're offering in there. Maybe it's the piece of equipment that we're offering. What are those skill pieces that we need to add to our program so that we're mirroring what business and industry actually does and utilizes compared to what we believe we should teach here at that point in time. So this next slide here gives you an idea of the plan for our program of study analysis. So I had talked about 2 programs of study that we have already completed. This outlines over the next 3 years what we will be looking at in terms of what that looks like. And even for some of the 23-24 ones, we've already started the process of looking at this. So we've already started setting up who we are going to invite for our interior and fashion design program of study. Ironically, my team laughs because I'm going to leave that one out, and I'm very big into fashion design, as many of you here know. But this is where we will partner with those business and industry people. We will bring higher education people in from 2-year and 4-year, and then they can help us mold what we need to give experiences for our kids. It involves offering work-based learning experiences. It's about, are we teaching the right technical skills? What college credit opportunities can we have for our kids? What other job experiences can we support? So you'll see that across there. We've got interior fashion design. We have career and life skills. So career and life skills is like our employability skills course. We offer a personal finance course here. So every student in the state of Wisconsin has to have some experience with personal finance. The district invested a few years back in every student taking a half of credit in personal finance to graduate. I believe it's actually up for proposal at the state level that is the new, they want to make the new norm through legislation instead of just having it embedded out in courses. We'll look at our finance and accounting program study and our marketing program study at that point in time. You'll also see on there our 5-8 elective course design. So working with Dave and Lance at the 5, 6, and the 7, 8 buildings, looking at our elective course offerings. When we look at all of the depth of programming we have there 9-12, we don't mirror an exploratory option for our kids at that level. There is no family consumer science in grades 5 through 8. There is in certain aspects of manufacturing down there, architecture and construction. So we will review what that would look like to change some of those course offerings, and then what that would have as an impact on the building schedules. And so in some systems, you're gonna see a 6, 7, 8 middle school here. So when we started down this road, Dr. Reese and I were working with Lance and Dave on this idea of, we're gonna look at 5, 8 as a whole, and over 4 years, what are my exploratory experiences, so that I make an educated decision on what electives I take when I get to the high school at that point. And then you can see it's brought out to 24, 25, with 4 additional reviews, and then 5 reviews in 25, 26. There is a little caveat on there that sometimes we go out of cycle, or we bring random things forward for you. So we, in every single one of our programs of study, we offer some sort of articulated credit. 85% of the time, that's with Moraine Park Technical College here in that system. But if they change a course, they change a resource, we then react and bring that back to all of you. So that's often where you see me show up in summer and say, hey, it's June and we're gonna need a new textbook for next year. So we budget for those types of things up front, but then we're reacting a little bit to the changes in their curriculum. The other thing that we have is in progress currently is we're reviewing our work-based learning opportunities for our students. And so at each level of, or each one of these programs of studies, when you get to the top of that level, we have a work-based learning component that kids can participate in. The most common is what's called Youth Apprenticeship. It's a Department of Workforce Development program. Students have to do 450 or 460 hours in a school year. They leave with a certificate. It's a paid opportunity. We actually have 4 YA students that work for the school district. So I have 1 in IT. We have 2 who manage our school restaurant at the high school called the Nifty Nibble. And then we have 1 who manages our school store also. We also offer a co-op program, then we offer a swim program and an internship program. So we're reviewing kind of all of the requirements of those, and we want to condense it down into a very straightforward, this is what each one of those means. It's a little murky and muddy and has been changed over the years. And so making it very clear to the student, if I want to take youth apprenticeship, this is what that means, but also making it clear for the employer so they know, because there's different requirements in each one of those at that time. So as we go forward and we look at some different things, sometimes there's courses we can't offer here. We don't have lab space, it's hard to find a certified teacher and so forth. So 13 years ago, something like that, or more, we offered on campus through a grant with Moraine Park, a certified nursing assistant program. So we currently have 35 students who asked for that course next year, with the ability to only offer 28 seats. So working with Moraine Park Technical College and Ms. Faust, we were actually going to offer a section this summer. And we thought we were hoping maybe we'd get 3 or 4 kids who would dedicate 60 hours to their summer life to sit in a classroom or learn virtually or hang out. In a nursing environment, we have 8. And so, which is great. So we're at the point where we'll start a waiting list. But we want to continue to offer that for our students. A year ago, we brought on the Emergency Medical Technician program and course. It is a 5-credit course offered here at the Moraine Park Technical College. It is partnered with Kewaskum School District, so it's a shared class between the 2 of us. Kids go on campus there, they are taught, and they leave with their EMT certification at that point in time. We are currently in the process of researching Firefighter 1. Having conversations with the assistant chief here, Chuck Beistel, Moraine Park. We'll get the surrounding fire departments involved here shortly and looking at offering that as an option for our students also. What's unique about that is if I pair Firefighter 1 with an EMT class before I leave high school, I spend 1 year at Moraine Park to get my paramedic license, and I'm now certifiable to start as a full-time firefighter paramedic at $65,000 for the city of West Bend at 19 years of age. And while I'm doing all of this, I have the ability to also volunteer and work for the surrounding fire department. So I live just northwest of town. I'm part of the Colesville Fire Department. I could finish my Firefighter 1 while I'm doing my, and volunteer for them, but then also get my paramedic license at that point in time. And then we are also looking at expanded nursing options. So when you look at workforce needs in Washington County and southeast Wisconsin, this is really the second area, is really in that health sciences area. So we're working with Moraine Park on how do we do some sort of a pre-nursing program, helping our students understand you can get in a degree from Moraine Park Technical College in a 2-year program, which is the same as a 4-year program. It really depends upon what you want to do after that, and what type of career job you're looking at that point in time. Last but not least, we're going to continue to expand our business partnerships through a variety of things. This year, through our reorganization, Brenda O'Brien, who's our career education coordinator, she oversees all of our work-based learning experiences for us, our career education center at the high school, does curriculum work as a curriculum coordinator. This year, with partnership and using Ralph Schloss as our director of community engagement, really trying to partner with businesses again. So Ralph had done a great job of going out and getting us initial contacts. We've had over 50+ people already tour our high school and our CTE programs this year. Well, another 20 or so business partners that will come through yet this spring. We want to increase our work-based learning partnerships. We have a goal, our first goal is to get 100 kids out in work-based learning in a school year, and then eventually to 200 at that point in time. And then we are reinstituting our Job Shadow program now that through COVID, a lot of job shadow shut down, the ability to go into businesses and so forth, and bringing more of our business partners in to guest speak and be part of our classroom. That's not just a high school thing. Career education starts all the way down in elementary school through experiences. So you'll see the second bullet point on there. Brenda is leading a team at the high school, and she'll start working with the other levels here around our overall career readiness plan. And that really does cover that 4K through 12. There are 2 state law pieces and legislation pieces that it encompasses, and that outlines that career experience from little on all the way through. These are the things that I'm going to experience before I leave high school, and you may have to pick 2 of these 5 items and experience. So I might have to go on a job shadow, I might do a work-based learning thing, I might take this educational opportunity when Freighter Health comes in and talks about careers. But we will outline that clearly, and that's a requirement that you have a career readiness plan signed off as a graduation requirement in the state of Wisconsin. And then once Brenda brings that process through, you'll actually see that plan come here forth in front of this committee and then through the board for approval at that point. So that's kind of the updates I have tonight. Questions I can answer for you. All right.
I like the options for kids, Tim, and I'm so happy that we've been able to partner on bringing these program analysis into the different departments, and I think it's been really helpful.
Yeah, it is fun, and what's really neat is you saw Fayed talk about career pieces. You're starting to see that in some other areas. A lot of our work right now is helping kids understand the wealth of options, and not just picking what I want to go to school and then figuring out my career. Let's figure out what you really love in life and then figure out how to get there, because that has changed immensely in the world today. And so I think that'll be a big piece, but you'll see a lot of updates coming forward. Some of my teachers don't always want to come like Joe and speak, so you might see more of me. They often are very good with, Tim, you got it, that's fine. But I also would offer up the opportunity, if you ever want to tour our facilities or visit our classes, please reach out. I will put something in the board update this week also. Jen knows this, I can tour 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. That's one of my favorite things to do, and showcase what we have here in our programming. But if you ever do want to come on a tour, I'd be glad to do that. So thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Great, thanks, Tim.
You bet.
All right, next up we have Jen Wimmer coming to discuss some policies in the 300 series.
Every bit as exciting as all of that is policy. Well, thanks for having me. Usually you see me at some other pieces. So the policy committee is as exciting as the curriculum committee, I promise. So we've got some other members on that, but they intersect. So I'll just kind of give some background because we've got some new members of our committee. It was, I think, almost a year ago that we were reviewing the 300 series as a committee prior. While technically up to date, there were some pieces that we wanted to look at improvement. And then certainly recently we've been talking about sourcing primary resources, secondary things, materials that are in the classroom, and that's really a driver for bringing back the conversation today. So I always reference and start our policy committee for anyone who wants to follow along with the dialogue. We certainly have that in board docs tonight, but all the policies are found under the school board tab. They're all right there, and it's the 300 series that really intersects with instruction. So you may as a committee decide this might be kind of the front runner, but maybe you want to revisit as a team because you have a more robust team. Now, maybe you want to look at other pieces, and we could certainly bring those back. So what we do is we usually start conversations in the curriculum committee because it's kind of the philosophical piece. You know, in this case, we'll go back, we've got an opportunity because of the timing, we'll go back to the full board for some pieces of reflection, and then it'll actually kick over to policy. So none of you have to worry about the technical aspects of writing policy. You know, so you didn't have to study and be ready to take a test on anything tonight. Just kind of reviewing the policies and have philosophical discussion, right? Where we're at, and then we translate that into policy language. You're a policy governance board. So then what that means is we take it to that committee, we'll tweak those language, we'll make sure all the references are solid with statutes, etc. And you bring that back, because of course there's a policy about writing policy. And then it comes before the full board for a series of readings. So it's either going to be 2 readings and unanimous approval of any kind of change, or it would be a 3rd reading. So, you know, we might get into a discussion and go, oh, let's tweak that a little bit more and bring it back. It might go back to committee, but all that's done with the full board. So neither committee has any action associated with it. So it always has to come back to the full board. But that's kind of the why we're here, which ones we're starting with, and the process. Any questions about that piece of it before we dig in?
Yeah.
Great. And as we go, we're pretty free-flowing team when we do policy. I'm going to walk us through each one, some highlights. And our goal in policy is always, you know, we're a different audience of readers. But our policy is what guides our district, right? There's policy, and then there's some practice. So they could be outlined for us in an AR, which is a supplementary piece, right? It's an administrative rule, and that's like, what does that process look like? There could be EX, which is an exhibit. It could be a form that gets filled out, samples, all of those things. So you have those pieces. But policy is kind of the guiding umbrella, and then that's how we execute the work on behalf of the district. Okay, perfect. I made sure to get a water since we have lots of policies to go through. When we were talking about, and again, really brought forward and kind of revisiting, because we've really had the topic around book selection and what's in our schools, why is it in our schools and all that. That's a really big driver for revisiting. So I actually pulled all the policies that would be associated with kind of one piece of that work, so we could look at it globally and then we can pick it apart a little bit. So in that first one, it's currently called Standards Aligned and Goal-Based Curriculum Development, and it's policy number 330, and the title that it goes under, and then it'll show that section, which is just the 300 series of instruction. So you can see that was recently revised September of 2019. Our intersection of policy, you can work with a couple entities to help provide legal guidance. We use the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. They provide templates, legal guidance, all of those pieces. This is up-to-date legal language in here. But this is setting the foundation of your role in a curriculum development process, right? It's holding us accountable to having continuous improvement and the goals. I'm pointing to the big triangle behind me because you see it when schools come up and give you their reports. Where are we? How do you know where we are? What were the goals? What are these foundational blocks? It also talks about your role as a board, not a committee, but then again, going back into that full board where you're responsible to adopt standards, you're responsible to adopt the primary resources. You actually annually hear, like, what's the plan for renewal? You just saw Tim Harder say, like, here's our process for renewal just in CTE. Jill has talked about, here's our process of what we're exploring for these others. These are setting the foundational pieces, and then it's going through courses. Any questions around the components of how we develop curriculum? I think one of the things that we've really held ourselves to is being transparent with our process, making sure our families know and understand, constantly leading back to see our work is in public. You can watch it, you can be connected to it. We engage our educational experts in the process, we gather their feedback, and then also we've made sure to have public reviews of our work as we're looking at textbooks, we're looking at curriculum, we're holding ourselves to that piece. We expanded in the last couple of years to make sure it was at the public library. They have different hours, just making sure that community could see those resources. The one suggestion, if I were to have any, I don't think when you're looking at the audience of the general public, try and write policy so it's accessible to someone who's outside of education. I don't think the title makes sense. This is a homegrown title. It doesn't even align with how WASB codes it. WASB would code it as curriculum development and improvement, and leave it that simple. So if you don't have any questions or recommendation, then I would take that one forward as a recommendation to change the title for clarity for a reader.
I think that sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions or feedback?
And one question.
Go for it.
So in the last paragraph on page 2,
Mm-hmm.
it references, there's a sentence, teachers are expected to teach the D curriculum in their assigned responsibilities. I don't know what.
Yep, that's just a typo in there.
Okay, just making sure.
Perfect, then we'll bring that forward as just a recommendation for the title change. Usually, just for background, June Kelly, when we bring those forward, something as simple as a title change, that might be an example of one we bring forward for immediate action on a second read, and we say, okay, because it's such a minor little shift so that we can get those in play right away. So again, a good foundational process on those pieces. The next one we're looking at is 361.1, it's selection of resources. So when you take a look at that policy, again, it's reflective of updated language, but let's pick this one apart a little bit, right? So going through, you've got this intro text around what are we talking about with resources. We're talking about what we would consider kind of primary resources in a classroom, right? Our textbooks, our foundational pieces that are going to be there and all kids would be exposed to, right? As part of their curriculum. When you look at that, I would draw attention to the bullets and see then if there's clarity in those bullets as they're written, if you think that there's anything missing in those pieces, because that might be an opportunity to clean up there.
Yeah, there was one bullet point there that I had concern about. It's
Sure.
the fourth one that just states the overall appropriateness of the materials relative to the intended student audience. I feel like that's left pretty open-ended, and I wonder, who determines the appropriateness, and can there maybe be a little bit more clarity in that?
Sure. And I know that we've had some conversations around just, again, as we examine the books and question those pieces, and I know I've talked with Dr. Reese around, you have a very comprehensive piece that you go through when you're looking at human growth and development. You're convening a community committee, you're really looking at that, you're trying to be representative of your community's values. So I think if we were to use that as a guide, we could maybe lend itself to not just legal definition of what's appropriate and where that line is, because that's going to be different for everyone. One thing I'll talk about when we get to our last policy where we consider items, everyone's bar is different, right? So how do we set kind of that bar that most reflects our community values, so that we can hold ourselves accountable to that piece? So any thoughts around where that bar should be set, things that you want me to explore? Again, I'll explore an alignment with kind of where human growth and development is, as well as I'll grab, and I can do this in time for our full board conversation, around where are there legal definitions, where are there others. And what we do is we look at all policies around, all the different policy companies that support policy work, and then I also look at area language as well.
Sure. Some of the topics I think that were of concern to me was the profanity
Sure.
and then the sexual content.
Okay. So then when you're looking at those we look at, so define that, right? What is profanity? What's sexual content? Where is that bar? So grabbing some definitions, some pieces of what that might look like for people. Any other?
Yeah, that was the main ones that were really standing out to me in some of the books and stuff that came forward. So
No, perfect.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll take a swing at kind of either putting some subtext under that, and you either lead with or within policy you define what those things mean, and then how we would review that. Your review process just stands, it's just showing where you set the bar, right? Okay? Any questions about that policy? So in this, this is an example where you have an AR, right? You have, it's called an administrative rule. An administrative rule is written by the administration, right? We're taking what the policy is from the board, and we're saying, well, what does that look like in practice for us? So it's really how exactly are we gonna execute on the policy as written? And it goes through criteria for selection, all of those. Your policy still stands, it still has that umbrella. I think if those things are defined in the umbrella of policy, we'd probably put our eyes on this again to make sure it's just updated. But were there any questions about the administrative rule that goes with this? Any questions? What I might ask you to consider or give me your opinion on, I think, one, I made sure in our district news when we had concerns around a specific text, but if anyone had any concerns, to reshare what that reconsideration piece is and how people could bring that forward and give that form. I would recommend to not nestle that part in here, but give it its own name. There's numbers associated with that, and talk about that so people aren't having to hunt for policy. So that's something we talk about in policy as well. So I'd probably take that a little bit out of the AR because it's nestled in there. It's part of practice, but I would make that exact form and that that piece for parents, I would make that as a standalone item so that a member could find that a little bit more easily. The form is really solid. They made sure that it was updated. It's easy to use. It can be taken in by anyone. So I think that the practice is aligned. And then the pieces of how the committee will function, all of those are true. But I think I would just kick out that one piece that would be a recommendation, just so people can find that easier.
So that would be a way that somebody could say, hey, this book, I don't think it's appropriate. Can we review this?
Absolutely. Yep. So anyone, and again, it can be delivered here to the school principal, anywhere. We made sure that our families were aware when they were questioning some things, but I would just, like I said, I'd kick that out to have its own label.
Sure, and then who would be reviewing that material then?
Well, actually, so if you want to take a look, you have a whole reconsideration process, right? So if in the event, it's number 4, in the event that something is asked for reconsideration, then you go through all of those steps. So the committee is set of who needs to be involved, what exactly the reconsideration committee has to go through to consider that, and then having to prep a written response. So, take a look at that process. It's pretty robust and it's pretty consistent across multiple districts. It's aligned and it's technically and legally up to date in that process. But take another look if there's something that's not clear. Because certainly the curriculum committee would be monitoring our work in that area. But you'd convene its own committee to be looking at the resource that's being asked for review. Any questions around that piece of policy and its accompanying? And again, I say this in between our committee meetings too. We're reviewing it now, but if an idea strikes you, 2 days from now, especially in advance, we know we're going to have a board conversation. If you think of something, just reach out, let me know. Ooh, can you bring a definition for this? Could you get a legal opinion on this? Just give me a holler, and then we can make sure we include that in the work. Any other questions on selections of resources and those pieces? Great. The next piece of policy is 362, the material selection for a school library and media. I would recommend this is one of my favorites, everyone. I always say this every time we get to it in policy. May 8th, 1972, my birthday. So I know it's 51 years old that we add this. I actually recommend that we would remove some of the outdated language and bring forward some new language. So this is really around looking at instructional resources for students. And then the difference is, library media services. So this is kind of an antiquated, I know Tim and I looked at, WASB has a template for revised library media services. It's really talking about the services and it's leaving like the book selections in its own piece and looking at that. So it depends on how you want me to try and integrate some new language, any of this existing language. Do you want me to separate out what's library media services, what's library media book selection? Because those are two different things.
Sure, what is an example of the library media services? Would that be like online digital content, or what is that?
You're actually looking at, so in Tim's domain, so he works with Kim Christensen, our award-winning district librarian. She just received an award for recognition. But that's holding ourselves responsible to having a long-term plan for library media. It's part of the technology plan. It gets updated. What's that cycle for update?
There's not a requirement anymore,
Yeah.
but we'll bring it with our next, we're gonna, instead of 2 plans, it'll come with our technology plan this coming year at that point.
So it's holding yourself accountable to have a integrated plan for those services. And it's the digital media, the collection itself, all of those pieces of the puzzle.
Some of it's research pieces and how to use the resources, some of it's online safety. There's a variety of different services tied to that. With that plan, then you qualify, we get what are called common school funds, which is what we use to fund our resource purchases in our district. So many districts utilize only that fund to purchase in essence, our materials. Let it be an online database, let it be the book that you actually see physically on the shelf at that point. That's more about the services the library will offer, encompassing, and then you have the process of selection of those materials, which is a little different.
Okay, so that's what you're saying you want to separate.
So I would recommend that you, again, if there's anything in this language you'd like to keep, but I think that there would be more robust language to talk about the services, holding ourselves accountable and having that nestled in. I think you're embedding it in the technology plan.
Yep.
So that's a piece that always comes forward then to the board, right? To have this plan, it's part of the plan. You have goals around that and you're having to, report out on those goals. It's holding ourselves, again, having a systems approach to that piece, right? There's that one piece around how we're really gonna run robust, library media centers. There's another piece that you would keep separate, right? It's different than textbooks, but it's how do you cultivate the collection that's sitting in the library, right? And we do have pieces, we had run into, some neighboring districts that ran into this. Everyone can look at the Destiny system. It's right online. You can see what books are in our library. You can look at all of that. It's right there. That's how our students can access books. That's how our parents can. But we do have some checks and balances related to age range and what's available to you in the collection. So, I can't just get a book transferred over from the high school through interlibrary loan and have at a book that maybe doesn't fit my developmental age kind of thing. You also have some pieces as a parent around having some ownership and direction for what you prefer that your child read, that kind of thing. And you see that in the classroom, you see that in some of the pieces. I can't remember where that line is right at the adolescence, right, Tim? We had put that into the system.
It varies. Part of the uniqueness for us is, like I referenced in my CTE part, we have a 5-6 building and a 7-8 building. So that 5-6 building is a little bit of a crossover, so we often treat 5-6 a little more elementary-ish. It's also aligning some of our surrounding districts, some of the digital resources. If you don't set it up correctly, you can then have access to the whole thing versus others. But we go through a pretty robust process. Kim does a really good job of using a variety of professional resources and through WEMTA, which is the state organization, the state's piece is making sure we're compliant with common school fund purchases and the intent of that law that funds our libraries at that point.
So I think kind of splitting those two concepts and writing language around each gives, again, in your role as a board, right, that governance structure, that piece around, I'm gonna have a library media with a robust continuous improvement plan of its own. Those goals are gonna come forward to me as a board member. And you know what, in addition to this whole textbook process, I know that there's this whole process and these checks and balances around library media selection. Right, that not one person is looking at something and going, yeah, let's get, 33 copies of this, that kind of thing. So, and we can speak to, as we said, there are some developmental levels in there around access, and I think we could put that in this piece too. So that would be my recommendation for that. If you're okay with that, I'll put some draft language in front of you to look at, so you can explore that. If you're fine, I'll bring that concept up with the full board as well, that this is what we're going to do, but we will develop the language for it for everyone to review. We'll do that as part of policy. Seems
Can I ask
good?
a question?
Yeah, please.
So does that come back here, or does that go to the policy committee?
No, we'll bring
and
it
then
back
come
here first. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll bring it back here first to you, but policy will have ownership for writing that. So before it goes forward to the full board. So we'll talk about it on Monday because we have a Monday schedule. We'll talk about, this is the vision for that. I would say policy turns around and meets the day after. We'll actually draft your language and work it through and then bring it back to you to look at so that you're not missing a beat, you're not waiting. But it comes back to you. That's that intersection of and where you haven't seen it. If we had already had this conversation and policy was bringing it back, then and you directed us and you got to review it, then you're like, yep, good to go, bring it forward to the full board. But so that's what we'll do. We'll probably foreshadow the conversation on the 22nd. This is how we're going to break up the parts for library media. It'll go into policy. We'll actually draft it and send it right back to you to look at. Any questions on that piece and those recommendations? And then the last one is controversial issues. And again, we had a lot of conversation last year because what's controversial for one isn't for the other. So we talked about the importance for us to have transparency, to help families know and understand what's going on in advance in the classrooms and having a say in that. And being able to help make choices for their child, have conversations to reinforce their own family values at home, those kinds of pieces in doing that. I think in the context, if we take the context of the book, right, a book choice, one, I know that Dr. Reese has already worked with her team on, there were just lists of books and kids are taking them home. We added a parent signature, right, so there isn't passive consent. Parents got to sign off on that. I think some of the older, they were just bringing the list home and, hey, sometimes, 10-year-olds don't bring home everything in their backpack, so making sure that we've got those checks and balances. But also too, we were saying kind of that burden is falling to the parent to look up the books, right? And what they are and all of that. Her team's already been working on what are the themes, what's a little synopsis of that, and then Tim is looking at doing a Screencastify, which is a quick video that shows people how to use the online library system, so parents could have a quick access to. But I know that we'll be integrating those pieces going forward as part of that selection. So again, I think for us, when we look at the controversial issues, I can't write out what everyone would deem, right? But I can put in really good process around making sure that I'm talking with people around what it is their child's going to learn, what are their primary resources, even in the selected ones, here's what they are, here's what the themes are, here's this, and then help them have voice in that process. So any questions or things that we want to see?
I just want to comment that I think it's important to include more information on those book list sheets because, I did see a copy of one that someone had posted online, and as a parent, I have 5 kids, right? I'm not going to have time to go through and research every book, and I'm trusting my kids, with the school, and I'm not expecting that type of content to just be in a required class reading list, right?
Right.
So I would want to know, oh my gosh, there's 60 F words in this book, because there is one on that list that actually has that many. You know, like, I think that's important that parents are aware of that, or especially the sexual content. There was a lot of books with that kind of stuff in it, and I don't think that's okay. You know what I mean? And actually, I went, you know, the list had 13 books on it, and over half of them that I found information on were totally inappropriate, you know, in my opinion. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And granted, there's probably some people that feel okay with that, but like, that's more. It was more than half, and so
Well,
I'm just.
And I think that we can re-examine, and I know Dr. Reese is doing this with her team, you know, re-examining those pieces and looking at it through a different lens and go, where my purpose is to teach reading right now, right? And all of these pieces. It's not a cross-curricular unit where I have to line it up to history. It's not this or that, you know what I mean? There is no other connection. And I think you touch on another thing too, is it's not required reading, right? And making that really clear too. So one, looking at it through that lens, making sure we've got that information together, and then if it's not that intersection of a cross-curricular unit, you know, how do you expand the list with some other choices? So that is the work. I know the other piece is we're redoing our website, which is sadly overdue. I look at Mr. Harder because we're like, we got to do something. Because I think sometimes that's an artificial barrier for people to access information, right? We have this information, and how do we make it easy? Because to your point, and we've talked about, and Dr. Reese and her team have it, it's how far do you want to dig in, right? Give me a year at a glance, here's the overview of what my kid's learning at every grade. Great, got it. Or I want to dig into this, or oh, I know this is really of interest to, and we want to have some conversations. I want to see what this looks like. We see it most in human growth and development, right? So we really walk people through, where is that? What does it look like? So it's just kind of leveraging a new website design to make all those other pieces accessible to families too. So we'll be doing some testing with that and getting some feedback around those pieces. But that's an exciting, that'll be an exciting change, because it's there, the work is there, you know. Jill's been at the helm you just started technically this fall. But it's nice to have some deliverables like that, that we've been talking about for a while. So we'll get a technology vehicle that, again, your end user are your families, right, and your community. So we'll do that piece too.
I think to add to that, so one thing when, you know, Melanie, you talked about that reconsideration process, part of that AR, when we reviewed it, has written in there, we will publicly put all of that information out there. So we will have our own subpage that will talk about the instructional review process, but it will allow the public to see every book resource that has been asked for reconsideration, what the final solution is for all of those types of things. The other thing you're starting to see with books, Kim Christensen and I were just talking about this as we look at our process. So, you know, she's gaining feedback from staff and everything else, then she cultivates her list from all of those resources, reviews them, then I review them before the purchase order goes through. We're starting to see book publishers provide a different type of information or tags to their, what you see on there, compared to, sometimes when you read the Amazon write-up or just the write-up of the back of the book, it doesn't get into some of those details. And so there's talks of things of, you know, kind of like you have a movie rating, not necessarily that they're going to rate books, but providing some more information like that. We're seeing some publishers or booksellers starting to provide more things like mature content or whatever being kind of asterisks on there. We're hoping that that continues to help out education institutions to be able to share that information out too. And so we're hoping that process kind of becomes the norm for many publishers at that point.
Sure, and I know when I was looking into this too, I discovered that books don't actually have a rating system like movies do.
Right.
So, you know, I'm sure there's obviously no ill intent on purpose for anybody adding this material, because any author can say, oh, this book is, the intended audience is ages 11 to 15, you know, but just because they think it's appropriate for that age doesn't mean that other people do, and there's really no guidelines to just say that, you know, on your book.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to go along with that too, like, you know, if you say that's appropriate for an 11-year-old, your 11-year-old is so different from mine, and those maturity, you know, differences being recognized as well.
Right, and as we said before, we're in partnership with the parents. We want them to have those, and your reading can serve to spark conversations, how many times do parents go home and it's like, what'd you do at school today? Nothing. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I've been on the end of those conversations, I'm like, what? Even just the knowing helps you have conversations with your children at home around what they're learning, what they're talking about, so it's, those are positive things. The one nice thing too is that, we're really networked with a lot of districts, and we don't necessarily do work in isolation, so, what someone has, everyone's also giving, if there's something that someone's already created, we're going to take and give credit joyfully, but if there's something that we create, we will also share too, because it's, like you said, it's just good practice. If we're going to be a front runner in practice, then we're happy to do that and share with others too. Any questions then around kind of the path that you want to see for curriculum, what you want to see in language?
I don't have anything in particular for curriculum,
Yeah.
but you were talking about the form and listing all the books and giving approval, active.
Yep, active consent where they have to sign their name.
Yep. So, is it going to? So I'm trying to picture the form. Sorry.
Yep.
Where you just kind of maybe select the ones that are okay, and then you sign it, and then leave the ones that aren't checked.
Yeah, I think
off the
you
list,
have both right on the form. So you've got the form.
Yeah,
I think they can do both. You can circle kind of what you're interested in, and you can also cross out. There you go. There you go. Now with 5 kids, she's got one hand right.
Full policy on my first swipe.
But yeah, kind of looking at making sure it includes both, whether you can cross something out, you can add something too. I think that's the easiest way.
Of course, now I can't find it.
That's okay.
Yeah, so it's, I'm reading, and I pulled the parent in me, the same thing Melanie did, I pulled up for one of my children. So like, here's the list of books, it says in there, I have to sign off as the parent, the student's name, and then it says also, please notify the teacher on the return of what books you would not want your child to read at that point.
And again, we would just make that a little bit more robust, so it's got some of those themes and pieces on there, yeah.
So I recently had a message from one of the high school, because the high school uses this form to, it's used multiple grades, and so this particular person had made a few adaptations to use in the class, right, which makes sense, because if he's doing a certain thing in the class, and it wasn't anything to the method of the form, but it was more just organization for his purpose. So then I sent him back all the book descriptions that I wanted him added to his form. So we're working on getting that list. We just don't have the giant list together yet, but I did say, please add these to your form. So he readily responded and said thank you and added them all to his form that was being sent to the high school parents.
So some will see that happening right now. So as we won't sit on it until there's a big unveiling. It's, like you said, when it's ready, we push it out the door. Great, I have clear direction. We're gonna have a shared conversation on Monday around these pieces with the full board. We'll talk about kind of what you wanted to see as a curriculum committee. I'll lead that conversation for the full board. Feel free to chime in at any time around our discussion or what you wanna see in the interim. And then I would encourage you to think about as a team, because we revisited the one outstanding item. Tim and I had brought some 300 series forward that needed some pieces. We were technically, again, up to date. The one outstanding one that would intersect with curriculum is increasing the number of credits that our students would be required for graduation. That's an outstanding piece that we wanted to work with counselors and others and look at impact of that. That will come back to you. But if your committee is interested in kind of going through them together as a group, we can go through them. There's certain chunks. We can choose to divide it up. I'm more than happy to come back and kind of facilitate that review or conversation around any of those policies. If you'd like to just kind of revisit as a team, happy to do that as well. So just let me know. Okay. All right, thank you.
And the next item on our agenda here is to establish a curriculum committee chair for the 2023 and 2024 school year. I've currently been serving in that position, and I'm willing to continue unless other people have any interest in jumping on board.
I think I'll take this year as a learning opportunity, and I would love for you to continue.
Yeah. Okay.
So Melanie so graciously in her first year jumped forward and said, I'll do it. So she's well seasoned now, so thank you, Melanie.
I don't think she'd recommend that.
They were like, okay, here you go. This is, I'm like, I don't know what to do. But no, it's been a good learning experience, and I'm comfortable with continuing in that role.
Okay, because you're also gonna be clerk, so I didn't know if those are gonna be
I don't think it matters, right? Nope. Yeah,
your
okay.
time.
Okay, good. So, great. Okay, so sounds like we've addressed everything on the agenda. If there's no further questions, I will go ahead and close the meeting at 5:45.